Okay, today is October the 15th, 2007. My name is Tanya Finchum, and I'm at the OSU Tulsa Library to speak with Jeannie McDaniel, who is in the House of Representatives here in Oklahoma, elected in 2004 and re-elected in 2006. And this is part of the OSU Library's project entitled Women of the Oklahoma Legislature. So thank you for joining us today. My first question is really about your childhood. What was it like? Where were you born? A little bit about your family life.
Well, I was born in Ohio in a rural farming community, and probably the two single biggest influences in my life were my grandmothers. Just salt of the earth, hard workers. I spent a lot of time with them and really learned about community service, about the role of religion in your life, the role of the weather for farmers, and looking back through the years, I would have to say it was a pretty strong family ties, and which has served me to this day. So things in my family revolve around food and fun and being together, and probably our happiest moments are when we're together and we're all talking at the same time. And we have saved recipes, we've preserved just a lot of things from our past, and I think it served me as a great foundation there.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I had a dysfunctional family by many standards, but I didn't know it. I have two real brothers, two half-brothers, and two step-brothers.
Oh.
And so...
No sisters?
No sisters. And at the age of 5, my parents divorced, and my mother moved us to a large city where I took dancing lessons, music lessons. I was a clarinet player for 10 years, rode a bus, public transportation, lived in an apartment, and actually then went to 12 schools in 12 years. We moved a lot, and when she remarried, my stepfather of over 50 years now, was in the military. And so through the Bay of Pigs, through a lot of different states and Air Force bases, my family moved, and my mother became a school teacher. And I actually graduated from Grand Forks, North Dakota High School. And so, but all of that taught you to think on your feet, make friends quickly, and generated a great love of reading, because it was my way to see the world. And wherever I went, no one could take that away from me. And so I think that really helped me to grow and to appreciate education, but also to appreciate people of all cultures, all religions. And so looking back, it was a great foundation. I don't think we could have planned it, but I was a Girl Scout. I did all the typical things that I think kids in my generation did. And we all were really aimed towards college. But at the time, I think making the world a better place to live was something that our parents instilled in us, that no matter what we did education-wise, that we would give back. And so when you watch your parents do that, from being scout leaders to picking up trash to volunteering a lot, and you grow up with that from your grandparents on, you realize that's what makes the world around you a better place.
So you visited the library a lot, huh?
At one point in our little town of 600 people, I tried to read every book in the library, but at that time I was only there in the summers later, and so I didn't quite get that goal. And I also found attics of my grandmother's where there would be books, The Girls in Limber Lost, just all kinds of books. And I was really uncensored, if you will, and but you just learned a lot. All the Alcott books, all the great authors, and we played the game Great Authors. Mm-hmm. And so I think all that generated in us that you could just see the whole world through the eyes of all the adventures we went through, all the Nancy Jr., all the Hardy Boys, all the Foxy Twins, and To Catch Her in the Rye. And it was a great way to grow up.
And then you went to college where?
I graduated from high school at 16, which I don't believe anyone should do, and hit the college campus in Oxford, Ohio, Miami of Ohio, at 17. I completed 2 years and didn't do very well. My kids have constantly asked, "What were you doing?" And I said, "Having a good time and growing up." I protested the Vietnam War, even though my dad was there, Dow Chemical and napalm. So I guess you would say I could have been sort of a hippie of the time, bell bottoms and long hair, and I just didn't like napalm. And then married and moved right to military bases and moved 6 times in the next 12 years. And again, an education in meeting different people, and had 4 children in 6 years, and then came to Oklahoma.
And what brought you to Oklahoma?
My husband, my kid's father was in the military and got out after 10 years, and we came here with American Airlines. And we've stayed here ever since in 1978, and I decided it was a great place to raise children, and it was a small state where you could influence policy and see the changes that you wanted to see, be part of the changes you wanted to see. And so, in spite of a divorce in 1981, my children and I stayed here. The public schools have served us very well. The community helped me raise a great family, and I now have 5 grandchildren here in Oklahoma. And I'm very blessed. And the religious community, the business community, and all the friends we've made here really has led to us being able to give back to our community. And I think that's what's important.
And how early in your life did you become interested in politics?
Wow, that's hard to say. I mean, I always voted in national elections, but I never really thought Republican or Democrat. Having been a single mother for a while without an education, I probably always, and having had a heart for the underserved in our community and the disabled and disenfranchised, I suspect I was always a Democrat and didn't know it. But when it came time to register, I've never voted straight tickets, so I would always look at the people and learn as much as I could. But I actually became involved in politics when in 1981, I went to work for a young woman at the time named Susan Savage. And Susan and I ran the Crime Commission. It was a nonprofit which dealt with crime prevention and community safety. And we chugged along as any nonprofit does, making it month to month, raising money and serving the community. It gave me the opportunity to visit homes all over Tulsa. And most of these people were victims of crimes. I volunteered for call rape at the same time and set up a close relationship between the police and myself, and learning how to teach people to protect themselves and prevent being victimized yet again. Sort of teaching them to be Bob the Builder and have a toolbox of common sense and ideas and things they could use. So it gave me an opportunity to be in apartment complexes, economically challenged neighborhoods, dealing with everyone from prostitutes to the disabled to those who were mentally disabled to the very wealthy. And that was a great education for me. And so when Susan Savage left and went to work for Roger Randall, who was then the mayor of the city of Tulsa, she went on to become the mayor of Tulsa. And I then went to City Hall and took my toolbox of skills of neighborhood and community organizing. After 10 years of that, I moved to the city and opened the Office for Neighborhoods under Mayor Savage. And it was a great way to expand what we knew about crime prevention and in building safe communities, but taking on other things like crime-prone conditions in neighborhoods, the broken window syndrome, facing trash, junk, debris, graffiti, and merging that with crime prevention skills and better roads, streets. It just all merged to help form community organizations that we could use through City Hall to help people live in a community they wanted to live in, make it look the way they wanted it to look. So at that time, Susan was mayor, and so even though she didn't involve us in a lot of campaigns, I did get involved in sales tax and bond issues. And so that was pretty much my first exposure to seeing how you had to raise money for campaigns and how you had to work with people, listen to their needs, to craft campaigns to help them to support what they wanted.
And then what led that to your decision to run for office?
Well, after Susan Savage served as the first woman mayor of Tulsa for 10 years, and when she chose to leave office and go on to other things, she's now the Secretary of State in Oklahoma for Governor Henry. But at that point, my youngest child graduated from medical school, and I moved the office into public works and sort of took on recycling and more environmental issues, working with citizens cleaning up trash and debris and that sort of thing. But at that time, when my son graduated from medical school, he said, "Mom, you have 4 kids with postgraduate degrees. It's about time for you to get back to school." So I enrolled in Tulsa Community College and got my associate's degree at night, and then OU got my liberal studies degree, my bachelor's degree while I was working at the city. And just as I graduated, Mary Easley, the woman who represented our district who went on to be a senator, was giving up her seat. And she came to me and said, "I think you would be perfect for this. Would you consider running?" And Jerry Askins, Lieutenant Governor now, came and spoke with me. And I saw it as a way to move to a different level to help people. And I thought about it long and hard because I love local politics. I love grassroots, being as close to the voter as possible. And I also had a lot of people in my district who didn't have health insurance any longer. And that troubled me. Typically, when you went into a home and talked to people, the first thing they talked about was either crime or the neighbor who didn't mow their grass or a barking dog or a street light out. More and more they were saying, "I've had cancer and I can't get insurance. I've lost my job, I'm working on a contract, I can't support my family." I was seeing more depression, I was seeing suicide attempts. And no matter what neighborhood I went in, when I asked how things were, it was leading back to economic challenges people were having. And so I thought at the state, there were 2 things I could help with: education, and I'm on the education committee, because I saw Tulsa Public Schools as an economic driver. It was driving people out of Tulsa in some ways, because the schools had challenges they hadn't had before of more economic depressed neighborhoods, more minority challenges with schools. And so I thought perhaps I could affect healthcare and public schools by being elected to the state legislature. So I decided to run.
And did you have a particular campaign strategy? Knock on every door?
I did knock on every door. I knocked on over 10,000 doors the first year and the second election as well. And I find that when you knock on a door, it was a surprise to me because the community had changed even more than I knew. I would have people come outside and close the door and start crying. They were grandparents raising grandchildren. And unbeknownst to me, Oklahoma was the leading state in grandparents raising grandchildren. We incarcerate a lot of women here in the state. We had a methamphetamine problem, which led to part of that. But overall, we incarcerate women at a higher rate than most any other state. With that, we have women who lose their children. And next of kin grandparents have stepped in to take that role over. In other cases, parents have just disappeared for whatever reason. And so these are people in their 70s who had not planned to raise grandchildren. They would step outside and explain they had exhausted their resources. They were 75 and trying to teach a 16-year-old how to drive, which frightens me too, frankly. But I learned about that. I learned about the challenges of having had breast cancer and not being able to afford your insurance premium any longer. So I realized more and more companies were offering jobs without benefits. It was an eye-opener to me and a heart-opener. It was just the challenges these people faced every day, unable to maintain their homes, on their Social Security or their retirement, the need to plan for the future, and how community can step in and offset some of these losses through nonprofits, which Tulsa is very generous in giving community in the right way. But it just helped me to see through the eyes of people maybe a little different than myself. I was at the grocery store with them, but I hadn't realized all the challenges they had. The challenges of mental illness in our community, not being able to get parity, not being able to get health insurance coverage. I found many people were confusing substance abuse and mental illness. And because they couldn't see it, oftentimes insurance companies disassociate your head from your coverage. If you have cancer, you have coverage, but if you have bipolar disorder, you may not have the same access to health care. And so all that became real to me during the campaign. So the grassroots campaign of knocking on doors, to me, that's the single most valuable tool we have in the campaign. I mean, usually when you knock on doors, people think you're trying to sell them something. And so I decided never to use a phone call, and I don't use a phone bank. So I always tell people, talk to me while I'm at your door because I'm not going to be calling you. And I've tried to hold to that tradition. And so it's a lot of walking, but I'm a marathon runner, so the walking is actually enjoyable. And it's healthy, and at the same time, you get to hold people's hand and listen to them.
What was election night like the first time around?
Well, actually, I lost the election, my first election night. When they closed the polls, I had lost 12 out of 20 precincts, and so I was behind. But there were absentee ballots, I learned, which I didn't know about. And as it turned out, about midnight when the absentee ballots were opened, I won the election by 35 votes out of over 15,000. So the idea that every vote counts became very real to me. And so I went home and woke my husband up, who had gone to bed, and said, well, it looks as if we've won this election. And I had been out taking down all my signs because I didn't know what else to do. And so we started out with a recount, and I learned to really appreciate the electoral process here in Oklahoma. Every ballot cast was taken to the courthouse and opened and counted by hand. And it validated that I did win the election. When there was a smudge or any doubt, we knocked that vote out. So I ended up winning by 24 votes. So more and more I say to people, go to the polls, educate yourself on the issues, and vote. The second election I won by a little bit more, 600 and some votes out of 12,000. But I think there's no better system in the world than the system we have. And you live with the results. And I don't take it personally. If the message I offer people is different than what they want in someone to represent them, I completely understand that. And so I like to think we have more in common than not. But if that ever becomes the case, I would understand that. There's lots of work to be done. And this is just an honor to serve people. And while I think I bring good skills to the table of listening and representing the people in my district, what I'd like to do is broaden their knowledge of what we do, because so often there's polarizing issues that they may cast a vote because of one issue. But if you cast 1,500 votes in a year in committees and on the House floor, you understand there's so much more to it than perhaps just a woman's choice vote or an immigration vote. There's a lot more that comes into play. And so they need to know how their money is being spent and how their voice is being heard and how the votes are cast in their behalf.
Did you have a slogan?
Pardon, what,
A slogan?
No,
No.
I didn't think I did. As I think back about it, I didn't. I've always been a neighborhood person, and I just wanted to be their voice at the Capitol in the people's house. And I could only say, I didn't go with preconceived ideas that I would be one way or another. I really felt I needed to listen to them, and I've carried that out. I've continued to survey, to knock on doors, to be accessible always. And so I didn't go with preconceived ideas that I will do this or I will do that. I have been labeled, but I've let other people do that. I think there's too much work to do to try to wear one hat or another, but instead look at each issue. If I would have any slogan, it would probably be I'd fall back on the rotary four-way test. And so I'm always asking, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Is it beneficial? I sort of fall back on that and look at it through those lenses when I cast that vote.
Well, tell me about the day you were sworn in.
Wow, it was, well, first of all, I didn't know until just a week before because we had to wait for the recount.
Okay.
And so when you step into that chamber, it is such an honor because you know that you're representing a part of the state in the people's house. And my grandchildren were there, and my children, and I think all of us that are parents, that is our goal, to always do things that would make our children proud and set a good example, and try to lead your life in a way that's exemplary, and that they would be proud to say that I was their mother. And I always hold myself as a mother and a wife and a grandmother and a friend and a daughter and a sister and as a representative. And I know all my constituents have all those relationships too. But when you step in there, it's just such an honor. It's very humbling to represent people and to carry their wishes with you and their troubles and their successes, their desire for good education in Oklahoma, for higher education, for good health care, for making Oklahoma a great place to raise your families and to grow old and to work and have a career. And so all that sits on your shoulders. And I would say that my faith has been not renewed, but validated and has grown. My prayer time has grown a great deal. And people that know me probably find that kind of funny because as a runner and a marathoner, I've always said, well, when you're running, you have lots of time to talk to God. But I must tell you, this job has brought that relationship even closer in my spiritual life. And I say that because there are times when you know nothing else to do but to say, dear God, what can we do about this situation? Help me to understand both sides of this issue and to vote in a way that it makes the world a better place to live. And so all that weighs on you when you walk in the building, not just in the chamber. When you walk up those steps, I just take it very seriously.
About the first day that you presented the bill.
Well, that's very scary, even for those of us that have done a lot of public speaking. And that's what I found to be so strange, was that you are nervous. And when the microphone comes on, even though I've done public speaking for years and never been at a loss for words, people will tell you, you still find yourself with the gravity of the situation and the honor, and that you're speaking for many people, and that you don't want to offend anyone, that you want to be very careful in what you say. And actually, looking back, I wish I'd had a little more debate. I feel like the Lincoln Douglas debate might have helped me a bit, because you're trying to present your bill in a way that helps those who may oppose it to see what you're trying to do. And and I realize before you get to the House floor, people have already decided how they're going to vote in most cases. So often your debate is out there as sort of a history of your thoughts on this, and to explain your feelings and the feelings of the constituents that you represent and why you feel this is important. And it's grown more important because now we're on audio, so people at home can sit and listen to us. And that's probably been the hardest thing about debating and being on the House floor, is because people sometimes are confused that you voted no on an amendment, but you voted for the bill. So I think debate is very important. It does make you nervous, and I don't know if that gets easier or not. But I found that I script out pretty much what I'm going to say, and of course you can't always in debate. But you just want to be very careful with what you say and not to insult anyone, because partnerships are critical in the legislature, whether you're Republican, Democrat, urban, rural. It's just critical that our partnerships and our trust amongst each other is very important, because on any given day, an issue that you're partnered with someone on and you're working and they're a very close friend of yours, the next day you could be debating against them and very passionate in your belief and hope to defeat them. And that night, you'll share a cup of coffee. And so that was probably the hardest thing for me, because I sort of wanted to brood a little bit when I lost issues, and there's not time for that. And so I just go back to the drawing board and decide, and you watch faces and you see what words provoke emotions that you want, and you need to put those in your little briefcase and use them often. And I found that being brief and not talking a lot on the floor, people tend to listen more because they don't hear your voice all the time. And so when they hear a new voice, they will stop what they're doing, because if you've ever been to the House, there are things, people are walking around all the time, they're drinking, and there are a lot of conversations going on as we are in debate and passing bills. So I found being brief and succinct, to the point, not wasting people's time, is very important.
Little secrets you learn along the way, huh? Right. Did you have a mentor or a role model?
I would have to say there have probably been a multitude of them. Certainly, Susan Savage has been a mentor to me, and she's younger than me, but she had the foresight to see in me the potential. I asked her once why she hired me, and she said, "You were a single mom with 4 kids. You could get up, get them out the door, get them to all their practices and games." And I thought, this is the person I need, because if you can organize that, and so that had an influence on me. Watching people work, having a good work ethic is so critical. And all the people I come in contact with that I admire I look at that and think what I liked about them, what leadership style they had that was effective, and I try to use that. And so it varies from day to day, but I would say Susan was very bright and very articulate. She kept copious notes of conversations so she could refer back to them. And I don't think anything can serve you as well as just doing your homework and knowing your issues, always telling the truth. And when you make mistakes, which you will, learn from the mistakes and confess. We made a mistake here. Let's see how we can do it better. And so those were skills I learned in watching her, and always being respectful of the other person, whether you agreed with them or not, but not to ever humiliate anyone or humble someone. And I think learning that, watching her, certainly working under her for 15 years, I learned that. And also I would tell you that in her opinion, family came first. And if your family and your own spirit isn't filled with what it needs, you're probably not going to be the best employee you can be. So always being respectful of people's family, and they're going to give you 60 hours a week if you do that. Whether they know it or not, they will. So having worked for a great person helps you.
Did you live in Oklahoma City while you were in session? Or
I
do
do.
You do?
I have a garage apartment there, and it reminds me of the story of Millicent Fenwick, who had an apartment when she was in Washington. I have no television there. I have one radio station, I won't name it, but it gets me my news. And I have a coffee pot and a refrigerator, no telephone, and it's sort of my place to go and have solace, and I can read my bills. And so, yes, I stay there during the week and come home on the weekends.
Walden's Pond, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been to Walden's Pond because I lived in Bedford, Massachusetts at one time. And absolutely. I'm a person that people think that I'm extroverted, but I'm Irish bred. I think I'm a tad bit introverted. I need time to fill my own well. And I do that through reading and contemplating and just enjoying, the weather, what's around me. I'm a runner, so I incorporate that into my daily routine as well.
That's a good lead-in. How does a typical day go for you in steered session?
Well, it starts pretty early, usually between 5 and 5:30, and I try to get up, turn the coffee pot on, and listen, to the news, and tie up my shoes and head out the door, and sort of plan my day while I'm running. I try to go alone. I might see someone else or wave or smile. I like starting the day in the dark, and I like it all kinds of weather, rain. We don't have snow anymore. I like that too, but I just think that gives me a good balance. And maybe not every day, but I try every day. But I'm not one of these people, if I don't get it, that I can't, manipulate through the day. I'm not that addicted, but it's a contemplative time, so I like it. And back in, try to get into the office, depending on the day when it starts. But I'm a morning person. I like my pot of coffee. I like to be behind a desk between 7 and 8, depending on, what the schedule is, if there's a breakfast plan. At the Capitol, it's very hard because we spend a lot of time at meetings, and a lot of the meetings are coordinated around food, which I know is great. Coming from a family of farmers, food's important. But so one of the challenges is trying to be pleasant and polite, not eat everything that's put in front of you, because it wouldn't be healthy for us. And using every minute to listen. It's probably been my hardest thing, because I've always tried to do many things at the same time, write something while I'm listening to something. But I've found with so little time now, and reading being so critical to our job, I have to listen to every word people say. Because if they hand me something, the chance to read through it may not be as great as listening to what they say. And so keeping copious notes on who you talk to, thanking them. I don't think anything replaces being polite to people. And so sending thank you notes, handwriting notes. I probably do at least 10 to 20 a day of handwritten notes to people. Anyone that calls me or emails me, I try to get back to. But also thanking people for their time. Meeting with lobbyists is critical. They bring the perspective of whoever they represent, and hearing both sides of every issue and doing the research I couldn't possibly do. And they're the ones that have to stay up all night and read the bills. I rely on them to tell me what's in the bill, and then I can look at the amendments and listen to the debate. But so you spend the day on the phone talking with people from the time you get up until the time you go to bed at night. So for most of us, if we don't go to the gym or do something in the mornings, we don't get to it after that, because there are people waiting for your time.
Well, is there much socializing after, at the end of the day?
As a freshman, there is. During your freshman year, that is pretty much when you meet yourself going and coming, and you eat way too much rich food and probably don't get as much sleep. In my second year, I reserved only so many nights to go out a week, 2 nights a week. And I have a granddaughter in Oklahoma City who's 3.5, and so I desperately tried to see her for just 1 night a week. And then the second year, your second session, I also spent more time in the office at night. And I suspect this year I will probably go out maybe 1 night a week, and all the rest of my nights in the office. Because you can sit there, and that's when you write your letters, and you can return phone calls and emails. And I try to do all that personally and get back to people and ask what they think. And then also sometimes we just sit in our offices at night and call constituents, because you are away from the city, and ask them what they think about things. And because we don't know till we get there what bills are going to be introduced necessarily, and what we're going to hear on a daily basis. So I just have people that I might call, maybe that has adopted a child that's has a disability, to say, are you being served? Are you getting your phone calls answered? Just how you doing? That helps connect us back to our constituency. And
How do you pick those people? Or how do you know who they are?
You generate lists of people, and when I ran the first time, and what I've always been, one thing I started when I worked at the city of Tulsa was block parties. And so I understand the importance of neighborhood coffees and block parties. And you develop hundreds of relationships of someone who maybe a child who's a child in my district that was abducted and murdered. So the people in that area had a very different feeling for a while, building a memorial to her honor at a local elementary school. So you meet so many people. A first grade teacher who has taught children from Mexico for 10 years. And I call and say, how's it going? But one thing that surprised me last year, she said, well, to be honest with you, things have changed. It used to be these kids would come in first grade. Within a few weeks, they were teaching their parents English, and things were changing very quickly. Well, now our population in Tulsa is such that Hispanics have their own television stations now, radio stations, and even their own newspapers. So there's more reluctance on the part of the parents to learn English, and so the kids aren't learning English as quickly. Little things like that I would never have thought about, but it's evolved. And so what someone tells you, 1 year may change 2 years later. So you just call folks and teachers. I have 285 school teachers in my district. I very much want to know how things are changing. Did you get the raise that we voted on? How's No Child Left Behind? How has it trickled down? What does it mean to you as a special education teacher? All those things, I need to hear what they have to say, because they're in the classroom. I'm not. And even when I visit and shadow, it's not the same. And so their eyes and ears are valuable to me when I sit in committee meetings and listen to bills.
So you stay in the office till 10, 11 o'clock at night?
Well, usually not that late, because I have to go to bed and get back up. But certainly, the longer you serve, I think you spend more time doing that. Whereas your first session, you really do spend time meeting everybody. And you're invited to dinner after dinner at very nice places. And it's a group and a circle of people that you will come to rely on. But now, as I look at my 4th year, I know those people. I know their phone numbers. I know their cell phones. They can call me. I can call them. So I don't need to have dinner with them any longer, really. That's, I can get them quickly if I need them.
Well, you're one of 19 women serving at the moment. Can you tell a difference between how that group interacts with the men, or is gender no longer an issue?
A lot of people have asked me that, and I never thought that it was. But after I got elected, I must tell you that it came to my attention that perhaps women weren't as respected and highly regarded in the world of politics as I thought that I always was. And I guess I just never thought about gender. I always thought the skills you bring to the table was what was important. And but I have found that we have a way to go. And so actually I've probably become more of an advocate for women than I was when I was elected, because I saw that we might be allowed to talk, but perhaps what we said wasn't considered as high a priority. I just love the opportunity to share with people our perspective. And we do bring a unique perspective, and I think it needs to be a balance of men and women. And the world's changing. But perhaps, and I can liken it to this, I was a woman of the 60s. I remember when only married women could have access to birth control. Single women could not have it. I lived when the pill came into existence. And so, and I've seen fathers now, including my son and my daughters, who've had children, realize they've looked at their children before they've been born. They've looked at them through, ultrasounds. They've come to know the child in utero, which we didn't in my generation. And so we look at things differently, and I greatly respect that. And it's given me a chance to understand how important it is for women to speak out, because women today are in the workforce. They're not going back to the home. We don't have access to that. My daughters have full-time careers, and they balance challenges that I didn't have to balance when I had little ones at home. But with that change, I think women do need to pay attention to politics. They need to be educated on the issues, and they need to have a voice. When I went back to college, I had women sitting in my classroom who were saying they were going to grow up and meet Prince Charming. And I don't think they really thought they were going to be in their workforce until they were 70, which they will need to be probably. The Social Security situation and the life expectancy for all of our lifespans are changing what we do in different decades. And once I was elected, it became clear to me that there were people that still thought a woman's place was in the home, that children shouldn't be educated before first grade or kindergarten, really didn't realize the profound need for prenatal care, for early childhood education. And so I think we do need women to share these experiences and to verbalize them. And I think we can do a good job of that. So that's what I see as sort of my role now. I love men, but I see myself more and more articulating the challenges of women in a global society.
Well, if a woman was interested in possibly going into politics, what would you have to tell her?
I would say it's very rewarding, but it's all encompassing every minute of your day. And you can be a great manager, but when the phone rings at 10 at night and someone needs to tell you something that happened to them, or has someone who's died in another state and needs to know how to get them back, or they have a grandchild who's just been picked up for methamphetamine and how do you bail them out? And they had your phone number on my magnet on the refrigerator. You're going to take that call. And so it's very important to constantly balance your spiritual life, your family life, and meeting the needs of your constituents. And it takes a lot of energy, and it's very rewarding, but I think that it's not something that you can capsulize in a 40-hour week and just say you're going to do it at certain times. Because to be the best you can be, I think you have to be accessible to these folks. You can't say, oh, that's not my job, because they've called you, and you certainly need to put them in connections to where they can get help as quickly as possible. So I would definitely recommend it, but I always tell people with young kids, it's a balance. I don't know if I would want to be away from kids I had at home growing up, having to live in the city for 4 months of the year. I'm married to a saint. My husband of over 20 years now is just a perfect person, and he balances it all very, very well. But he has a career too. But if I had kids at home, I would really think twice about it, and because you're away a lot, and I do take grandkids to meetings with me. And just as I did my own kids have always had a mother who's at a public meeting someplace. And they've always done their homework while they sat beside me or rode in the car, or when I was running, they'd be on a bicycle and I could give them spelling words because I memorized the words before we left. So if you can juggle and manage it, it can be the best of both worlds because you're also going to open it up to young families too. But it just takes a commitment of a partner, your spouse, and a lot of balancing and a great sense of humor. Probably one of the funniest things I did one day, because you're always in a hurry, and you're always trying to look nice, and I've been so jealous of men because, they jump out of the shower, they just put on their suit, and I don't know if anyone notices if they wear the same suit every day or not, but I think for women, we want to always look presentable and be clean and, look like someone's mother, sister, wife, friend. And I was driving to work and I looked in my cosmetic mirror and my eyes were just pure red. And I thought, oh my gosh, and you do read a lot in the legislature. And so I have eye drops and 6 pair of reading glasses. And because you fall asleep reading and you wake up knowing you need to be reading something and to educate you about an issue. And I looked at my eyes and thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go to the doctor. Well, what I had done was I had used some lipstick liner for eyeliner, and because they looked kind of the same, and I was in a hurry, and so it was fine. It turns out I was just fine. But you have to get little tricks so you don't make mistakes like that. Or unfortunately, I wasn't going to a television interview that morning, but you do learn to look in the mirror before you go out in public. But that was, when you're trying to micromanage and do everything, it can get busy at times.
Well, do you have a bill that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, there are lots that I've worked with that I'm proud of. I would say that my passion has become women and children. And so any bill that we've worked on that's dealt with getting more kids to have insurance, access to insurance, because I truly believe that, and there's a saying that it's not original with me, but it's sick people can't earn and sick children can't learn. And I think that if people are healthy and have access to health care, they're going to do better at work and they're probably going to learn better at school. And so those have been issues. Being on that health committee has been very helpful to me. And trying to make sure the kids have access to those things. And then good education. So, there are little bills that you bring in. We're a very populous state. We have a huge constitution. And so, working with people with disabilities, looking at the list for the Advantage program, making sure people are having access to what they need to, navigation systems for grandparents raising grandchildren, kinship navigation we'll probably look at this year. And also I come to the table believing that all state employees want to do a good and great job for the citizens in their state. And if someone's not served, perhaps it's just a communication that we have hooking them into the right channel and the right system. So I've really been fortunate to work with great department heads, and I know that they want to connect with people where we can serve them the best we can do. So probably just channeling people together and putting the connections and networks together to communicate needs and services has been probably the most important thing, other than I don't have a huge need to be an author of something. Being a part of something and moving it forward with a group has been important to me. So smoking cessation. This year I'll probably introduce a bill that would prohibit adult smoking in cars with children. Every time I see a car go by, I'm like, oh. And but so it's not so much the ownership of a particular bill as issues that you work with others and you try to do the best job you can.
Do you find yourself buddying up with any of the women in particular?
Absolutely. Representative Lee Denny and I, Lee's a Republican, we've talked about starting the Common Sense Caucus, because a lot of times you see things and you scratch your head and like, who thought of that? What were they thinking? But you do, and it's funny, you reach across the aisle. I've probably worked with most of the women on the other side of the aisle on issues. And on my own side, sometimes we agree and sometimes we disagree. And that's what's interesting. It doesn't always break down party lines. So you do. And we have a cancer caucus, which I found to be really interesting. So
Mostly men or women and men, or mostly women?
it's women and men, actually. And but when women come together, it's funny. I find myself in meetings, having been a mother marcher, I find that certain disease groups or specialty groups will go to men or women sometimes to run a bill. And actually, they'll go to the majority party, which I'm in the minority right now. So if you have a bill you want, you probably need to have an author in the majority party or one of in each party, because right now we're kind of in a unique position because our Senate is equally divided and the House has just gone Republican. But so people sponsoring bills, you have to look at that to see if you can get a hearing. I actually carried a bill last year which didn't get a hearing. It was to require seat belts in the back seat. In Oklahoma, you don't have to wear seat belts in the back seat of a vehicle. A child does, but adults do not. And I thought that was a great bill, but I didn't get a hearing. So and then there are things you carry, sales tax exemptions on hearing aids, Habitat for Humanity. I've been a chairman, so I've carried sales tax exemption on building supplies for Habitat. But you carry all these things, and sometimes if you can't get a hearing because you're in the minority, a majority member will take that and carry it for you. So if they believe in that. So there's just many things. This is an interesting state. Our tax structure is interesting. It's not like any state I've ever lived in. Excuse me. Because we're so dependent on sales tax, which is regressive in my mind. But this is a state, unlike Massachusetts, that has realized that people here don't want to pay property tax. And in other states I've lived, property tax has been a much bigger part of the formula or the equation for how state funds their needs. So it's very interesting. And I would say, as a legislator, that's been my biggest challenge, is to learn the funding formulas of all of our agencies in the state and then try to see how we can do a better job of it. And if you look at the history of the United States, and when I was first elected, I went back and read Angie DeVoe's works and tried to figure out who is Oklahoma, who is the Oklahoman, and where did these people come from, and why do they think the way they think? Because I wanted to know. I thought if I understood the roots of the state, I could do a better job. And so I went through Leadership Oklahoma, which took me from Fort Sill, being in the barracks, talking to men about to be deployed to Iraq, visiting Death Row in McAllister, Big Mac, going to Guyman, to Seaboard, to the hog factory, and watching people work. I thought, surely they get carpal tunnel doing this, these shifts day after day in a hog plant. And just trying to learn what makes Oklahoma tick. And that helped me understand better some of the bias and some of the culture of Oklahoma. And when I came here, we have a culture not necessarily of having the same desire for education of other places that I've lived. The culture of education being the path out of poverty. And I think that's changing, and I want to see that us keep moving in that direction. The other is the culture of insurance. And as right now with the presidential election already underway for 2008, I find myself realizing that a lot of people in Oklahoma have not valued insurance necessarily, or health care. And so I listen to that and talk to people 21 to 35 who think nothing's ever going to happen to them, that they would need health care insurance. And hopefully they're right, but unfortunately they're very prone to needing it at some point. And so understanding that and then putting it in terms so people in our state can see how this can move us ahead in a global economy. Because more and more I think we understand that we're not competing with Texas and Kansas. We're competing with the world. And our children tomorrow will be competing globally. And that's exciting. And so I think taking where we started today, going back to the roots of my grandparents who gave me security and a feeling of safety and great work ethic, how we implant that in kids today through our example, and then let them move through. They're going to be navigating in a world that we can't even envision at this time. So I think that's sort of our challenges as legislators, is how do we bring Oklahoma to the level of giving these kids the best foundation possible for tomorrow.
Sounds like you need to be reelected and reelected, doesn't it?
Well,
So
I
every 12 years.
would think so, but you don't know. I think when one door closes, another opens. So that's really up to voters. I have one thing I can't do. I'm not the greatest campaigner. I can't ask people to say they will vote for me. I just ask them to consider me when they go to the polls. I don't ask people for money. That's probably the hardest thing, and I think probably when I was growing up, you're taught not to talk about yourself, not to talk about your religion, not to talk about money or politics. And when you start to run, you have to do all those things. And I have to tell you, I don't like to talk about myself. I try to learn more about you and store that in my memory. So if I see you again, I can ask you something about that grandchild who was born premature or where you grew up. And but these are things you have to learn to do. So I would say to anyone running, a woman or a man, they have to be able to believe enough in themselves that they're going to ask people to give them their money. And it's probably harder than asking them to vote for you. And I believe in using my own money too. I believe in contributing to my own campaign. How could I ask someone to contribute to me if I wouldn't contribute to myself? But I also think that in respecting their religions and their spiritual life and talking to them about that and just knowing that we all have to work together.
Well, do you drive to the Capitol down Lincoln Boulevard or do you come in a different direction?
No, I do drive down Lincoln Boulevard, and it's awesome. Every time you go there, it's just a feeling that you're doing something that we do in America. We do it in capitals in all 50 states, and there's kind of a fraternity of feeling. I don't play golf. I don't shoot skeet. I don't go on these turkey ventures. And, at first I thought, well, when you're in politics, but I've learned that we have other common denominators. I think all 100 other legislators I serve with in the House come with the same good intentions that I do. It's just they have different things in their suitcases of life experiences. And so when we get there, we open our suitcases, then we begin to negotiate on how we reach our goals. But I think anyone that runs for public office has good intentions to serve people. I have to believe that every day. And no matter what party they represent or what area of the state they represent or how they're funded. And I think the rules that the Ethics Commission's put forward and the voter having the ultimate say is the best. It's just the best system on earth. It's not perfect, but it's the best.
Well, as you drive down and then go in, where's your office? You've been in the minority.
Well, I'm on the third floor. I'm in what's known as the bullpen, it's very crowded. I have an office. It's not as big as this room, but it's bigger than I was in a closet like last year. But I like to stay down there because I stayed with a freshman, and I could have moved up to a bigger office. And my assistant, I share my assistant with another person, which is fine because I try to do as much of my own hands-on as I can and not delegate. But I like being on the third floor. And of course, when the bells ring, I have to run up the steps. And that's another thing. Guys don't have to wear heels. I have a red pair of shoes that I'll be wearing this year, sort of a takeoff on the Wizard of Oz, because I feel sometimes I'm in Oz when I go to the floor. And so I'll be having a pair of red heels this year to click together and maybe help me make more sense of all this. But it's a great process, and it's such an honor that I encourage women to think seriously about it and then look to other women. There are attorneys, there are judges, there are so many women in positions now. And I think that we can take the experiences we've had, share with each other have a laugh about it, and then go in there and try to do the best job we can. And I think we're doing a good job. I think it's, but as I said, until I got elected, I really didn't realize that we were still a minority in many ways, and that and we've just had the right to vote such a short time, in relationship to the men that have been in control of our world.
Well, some have said that it's not necessarily a gender that makes a difference, it's where you're from. Tulsa versus Oklahoma City versus Guyman, but GRP has something more to believe.
That could, it could. One thing being elected to the legislature does is it gives you access to people you wouldn't otherwise get to meet or spend time with. So we do spend time with people that run colleges, people that run huge corporations, people that have been successful worldwide, people who are have gained wealth and success, and who've often had different management styles, but you try to glean from them what worked and what can we take from them and take to the house with us. And one person I met last year who I think I will always remember was I got to meet Dr. Jared Diamond, who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, and won the Pulitzer Prize for that. And he was at Chickasha, and I had a chance to go and listen, and I took my book to be autographed, and I bought his latest book, Collapse. But he gave a lecture on civilizations and cultures around the world as an anthropologist, and it just brought home to me that even the differences among rural and urban legislators, big city, little cities, when you go to New Guinea, or when you go to Montana, or you look at Haiti and the Dominican Republic, or Africa, you know, we're all children, we're all human. We have the commonality of our own genomes, if you will, and how we make that work to preserve this planet, it has a profound effect on me. So certainly I would tell you that after listening to him and having that exposure, it even broadens your universe more. So it doesn't trivialize what we vote on at all. In fact, it makes it more important because I see it as part of a much, much larger picture even. So it's sort of the responsibility you go with, thus the growth of the spiritual life, because I seek guidance more and more, because I know I'm just one person and I need all the help I can get.
You know, actually, getting to spend time with college presidents has been very interesting. And from John Fever down at Chickasha to Gary Trunapole, who's a runner here at OSU, to David Boren, George Kaiser, Chief Chad Smith. I mean, this state has, I've met Wilma Mankeller, and I knew Chief Rhodes, who just got booted out. But
all of these people have unique management styles and skills, and so it's really an education.
So it's kind of like piecing a quilt together, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. And that's sort of the safety net we try to build, you know, for the state.
Are you planning on any particular bills this year? Have you already got any in mind?
Yes and no. I found that the best success sometimes isn't all the bills that you take down there, but the bills you end up working on that others. I'll definitely run a smoking bill, an anti-smoking bill, probably in the vehicle. I'll probably run that seatbelt bill again, because AAA and Safe Kids Coalition has decided that's important. I listen to my constituents. I talk to my DA. I talk to my court system. Going to drug court graduation next week, and I was instrumental in a mental health court starting in Tulsa. When I knew we had one in Oklahoma City, and we had a great jail diversion program for mental illness in Tulsa, but we didn't have a mental health court. And I did an interim study on that, and so I didn't take a bill. The interim study resulted in the funds being available for Tulsa to use. So sometimes you have to sort of look at all the things you do and then look back in a year and see what it's resulted in. And so I did an interim study my first year on mental health court in Tulsa, which ended up happening. And really not to supplant what was being done, but just to offer on the continuum of care another tool in that toolbox that judges could use and the sheriff could use. I also did a study on pregnant women's use of methamphetamine because visiting the shelter here, I realized we were getting a lot of newborns that were testing positive for drugs, what we could do about that, and how we could do better prenatal care and screening and educating pregnant women. Because we didn't want to lock them up, certainly, because then they would come in for prenatal care to have testing done. So that's a whole social work issue. Usually groups will come in, like social workers or educators, and ask you to carry a bill, or people in your district will ask you about a bill that's important to them. And so that's sort of what we're doing right now on the interim. We're allowed to introduce 8 bills. I just did an interim study on housing authorities jurisdictions. And I did an earlier study this session also on adult adoptee birth records. In the state of Oklahoma, if you're an adult adoptee, you do not have access to your original birth record except through a court order. And those are hard to come by. And so I had a lot of women meet with me and men who are adults now, and they have sought to get their access to their original birth record. And that is not, you can't do it in the state of Oklahoma. So if it will result in legislation or not, a bill, I'm not sure. Right now, Title X is being rewritten and they're exempting the adoption part of that bill. So those are just things that you work with. And so I will introduce 8 bills, but I'm not sure what the content is right now.
Well, when you say interim study, what all does that entail?
An interim study is usually something that needs a little intense scrutiny or more scrutiny. So rather than just introduce a bill, you bring together, you have a concept that you want to discuss, and it gives the group a chance to provide their point of view. In the case of the mental health court, what we did was we had people from Oklahoma City, the judge and the DA's office, come and make a presentation, and people who suffered from mental illness and how that court had helped them and diverted them from jail. And then the people from Tulsa who had the jail diversion program came and met at the same time. And if you get into a room and have a discussion, there's no right or wrong. You simply discuss, you look at what other states are doing, and then out of that can come a bill. Or you may decide that it's just an amendment to a bill. Or you may decide that you may get the idea that there is not consensus that this would move forward, and so you don't introduce a bill. It sort of gives you an idea. Some of the interim studies produce big reports. I have an interim study right now that I just finished reading on reactive attachment disorder, parents with children with RADs. And it was an interim study, a plan was developed, but the plan was never implemented. And so often plans don't get implemented unless there's the resources and funding to put them into place. So I'm looking at that right now to see if there's access to services that these parents have available to them. Or are they there and they just don't know how to get it, and we need a better website or a better support system. So that's the kind of thing that you work on in the summer in your interim time.
Are you the chair of any committees, or have you been?
No,
Not yet.
No, because I'm in the minority party, and so I wouldn't speak. So when the other party, the majority party, I think has all the chairmanships. We may have one, I'm not sure. And then your seniors, your most senior elected officials are usually chosen to co-chair. But it's sort of new. It's a new day in Oklahoma. I'm in the minority party after 80 years of the Democrats being in the majority. And I actually came in a year that the Democrats lost the majority in the House of Representatives. And so it's been kind of interesting, but since I didn't know any other way, it's really okay. I mean, it would be nice because you probably get all your bills heard. But I've been very fortunate with the system. I mean, I must tell you, I've been treated well by the 2 Republican speakers that I've served under. And they have granted the interim studies I've asked for. And my bills have, for the most part, been heard. And so I can't speak to the other way because I don't know.
What committees are you on then?
I am on the health committee, which, and we now have full committees and subcommittees. And this is a different committee structure too that's been changed. So I'm on the full health committee and I'm on full education, which means all the public school teachers, all the public schools, which is kind of exciting because more than half the Oklahoma State budget of over $7 billion is allocated to education, common ed, and higher ed. And so being on the education committee is an honor, and it's a full-time job. We have met every Tuesday for the last 6 weeks studying interim and performance pay and merit pay and other issues that come up on the formulas. So I'm on full health. We are taking on health care. Massachusetts just went to mandatory health care in their state, and certainly we'll be looking at things along those lines. How do you provide health care? Do you take lottery money? Do you take smoking tobacco money, or do you do it with Medicaid? And then I'm on Family and Children's Committee, and I'm on another committee that's public health. It's a little bit different. So it's a variety. Like I said, some are subcommittees and some are full committees, but I'm on those 2 full committees.
That changes from year to year or
From session to session. Okay. So I will stay on those committees next year, and then if I'm fortunate enough and reelected in 2008, then I could probably stay on those same committees. And maybe move up and, I don't know if I get to be a vice chair or not.
Are there a mixture of men and women on most of them?
Yes, and it's they're usually Republican majority and Democrat minority in the chemistry of the committees. But actually, and that's the way it is. And that's why when people say, well, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, it really doesn't until you get into a situation like this, because that is where being in the majority is very important. It's critically important, because that it decides how the ship is going to go. And and I would say we agree, we being the House, probably on our votes, it's 98% of the time we all vote together. It's just on the real divisive issues that we have very clear and distinct differences.
And the House has a mouth of the House?
We do have a mouth of the House. And that's usually someone who is on the microphone a lot, and maybe someone who, they talk a lot. And
who have they been since you've been in?
Oh my goodness, well, Fred Perry. I'm trying to think if we've had a woman. I don't think we've had a woman now that I think about it. But it might be a guy it has to be someone that can take a joke. It might be someone who's stood up and screamed and yelled a lot, or someone who has an opinion on just everything.
Is it usually a freshman, or can it be anyone?
I always the French of a joke, which is kind of funny that they do. Every year, they pick a person who they play a trick on, and they say that the governor's on the phone and needs to talk to you. And you go to this one desk where there's a phone, and you stand there. And I waited 30 minutes before the first year, and you're voting, and everything's going on, and they'll say, Representative McDaniel, has the governor come on yet? And I'm like, no. And you're so in awe that the governor is calling you, and here you're on the House floor, and it turns out to be a joke. And I think I probably waited as long as anybody, and then you're standing there with the phone to your ear trying to vote, and of course everyone knows what's going on except you, the freshman. But I have a great sense of humor, and I can certainly laugh at myself. So it's very enjoyable.
Well, has he called you since?
I have talked. Actually, usually he would have an aide call me, but we do have a close relationship, and the governor vetoed a bill this year and called the Democrats in to stand behind him on that, and it happened to be on medical anomalies for pregnant women, and it was a very poignant bill. It's the first time I can remember that we had all the OBGYNs and nurses and doctors come forward and stand behind us. We ended up, we sustained the veto, and then it was later a new bill brought back, and we lost that cause. But it gave us when you work in groups like that, you try to reach out, and when you deal with people's professions, that's when you learn the importance of your constitution and your state. And I've certainly never wanted to come between a doctor and a patient in a relationship or scope of practice. And that's where we do have doctors on the floor. We have a doctor that serves with us who's delivered over 600 babies, who's a family practitioner. He is a Republican, but oftentimes he stands alone with Democrats in some issues regarding medical issues. And so stem cell research, things like that. And it's just very different. Tax cuts is something that I've not been able to support. I'm a person who believes you get the government you pay for. And so I've pretty much support taxes and believe it's my way of paying for the services that we desire.
Do you envision any of your children ever going into this area?
No.
No?
Maybe grandchildren. I will say that they have gotten involved going door to door.
Mhm.
My daughter, my oldest daughter, Teresa, is my campaign manager. She's a registered Republican and she's an accountant. And she certainly, I've written a story on everything you ever need to know you learn through your children. So having 4, and she's been a teacher to me in the business world. She's a part owner in her business now. Her sister is a social worker with a master's degree, who's probably further left than I am. I have a son that's a doctor who is right, a little farther right than Teresa, and then a son who lives in California, which I'm not sure what anyone is in California, but certainly brings a perspective of what Schwarzenegger's doing there now, and certainly has the cultural challenges that we think we have in Oklahoma, but we have no idea that if you're in California. So from them I learn and listen, and I call them and ask them what they think. And it's when I'm being told the truth or not, because they know their industries very well. So I have medicine, accounting, insurance, and then I have social work. So through their eyes and ears, it helps me a great deal. They understand the campaign structure. They understand the importance of raising money. They understand the importance of me being clear in my messages. They've gotten savvy to campaigning and knocking on doors. And I'm grateful. I couldn't do it. They are my team. And we're as grassroots as it gets. My grandchildren can knock on doors too. And so hopefully what they are learning is how the political process works and how important it is to be involved. If not in politics, there's certainly community level volunteers and serve on boards, raise money for causes, scout leaders, Sunday school teachers. And so they've learned the importance of giving back.
Do you have a favorite campaign story or two?
Well, of course, the poignant ones are the ones of the grandparents coming out and talking about the challenges in our society today, raising grandkids. There's always the funny ones of, being invited into homes, which is something you should never do, is going to someone's home, but probably my family's been guilty of that. When you hear 5 locks being unlocked for someone to open the door and they invite you in and they're 90. My daughter went in and sat down, and people are lonely. And you probably spend more time with people than you should sometimes. But when something began moving under a pile of laundry on the couch, and this guy didn't have any pets, she exited quickly. And you certainly want people to be dressed, and we've all run open doors and found people perhaps not clothed as fully as you would like. And there's always those stories that you have. But they're all God's children. And when you knock on their door, I guess perhaps I did find a funny story one time. I saw a bumper sticker on a car in front of the house, and it said, "Politicians are like babies, they need to be changed often." And so my curiosity just got the best of me, and I knocked on the door, and this man was not a voter on my list, but I knocked and I said, "Can I just ask where you got that?" And he said, "The gun show." And then I noticed he had a gun tucked into his waistband, and he said, "Oh, the gun show." And I saw in the back, he had in his living room like a silhouette of a target, and it was of a female politician. And I said, "Oh." And he said, "Oh, you can buy those at the gun show." I've never been to a gun show. So he had had a bad week. His wife had gone to visit her mother, and he wasn't sure she was ever coming back. He lost his job, and he had done everything right, gone to college, got an education, and he was a victim of downsizing, and the company had sent the jobs overseas. And he had a bad day, and we talked a while, and so I left. And I later got an email from him, And he was likening the visit that I had with him to someone throwing a starfish back in the ocean when a bunch are washed onto the beach and you pick up one and throw it back. And he said, you stopping and talking made me rethink my day. Thank you. And those are the times that you think, gotta keep doing this. And we need people in the community that want to listen and hear people's stories and their challenges so we can try to make life better.
You've been doing that.
I hope so. And I plan to keep trying to do that.
Do you have anything I haven't asked that you want to make sure we get down? Anything? I've gone through most of my things.
No, I think that's fine. Just thank you for asking me.
Well, my last question is usually, when history's written about you, what would you like for it to say?
I would like it to say that I was a good person and I worked as hard as I could to make life better for our community and our family. That I was fair and just worked hard. I don't need a lot of material possessions in life, so living in my one room when I'm in session is very easy. And not to leave a footprint. I've been a backpacker, and but to be a responsible person that takes responsibility for my health and for what I say and do, and be a good role model for my family and those I come in contact with, whether it's a child that pages for me or someone that works in my campaign. Just every time you talk to someone, just try to leave them with a smile and that there's hope, and that the problems we face today, people faced 20 years ago or 100 years ago, just in different packages. And so, but making life better for tomorrow and preserving the planet is something I hope people would think I took seriously.
Well, I can see why they would after talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.